How's it going, lazy Bruces? I'm Bobby Sixkilla and welcome back to Sekimeiya. We're Shiroya still, but we are now 15 days in the past at the moment when the explosion happened that killed Mia. Thinking about whether we should or should not try to change the past. We're not far back enough anyway to change Mia's fate yet anyway, but we don't even know if we really want to at this stage, and Mia sure as shit doesn't, so I can't say I blame her, to be fair. If I can change the past, can I prevent the attack in the tower from happening? I can at least prevent Atsuki and myself from going there, but would this really work? What would happen to me? I already thought of this, but if I change the past, would I remain in a world with another version of myself? And if I can do that, should I? Instead of trying to travel back one more time and save Mia in the first place. The darkness had become absolute. On that day, the Sekimeiya must have been somewhere. As Ashiya's announcement had already been made public, they were probably keeping it somewhere in the tower. I walked for minutes, every individual step feeling surreal, and the bright image of the screen frozen in my mind. November 30th. I kept going, hugging the wall next to me. At one point, the path began to slant up, making every step tougher. How do I get out of here? Should there be a ladder somewhere? For an entire day I'd grown used to hearing the echo of my own footsteps, with no other sound. I wasn't in that tower anymore, but the sensation was identical. I slowly increased my pace. I was so close to finally being outside again. The tunnel was a straight path, seemingly unending. After walking for a while, I started to feel a little desperate. Was I going toward an exit? Or was I completely lost? I couldn't see anything that distinguished where I was. I was too dedicated to my path to turn around and go the other way. It almost felt like that there would be a monster waiting behind me if I did. I could only keep on moving. Almost like I was in a dream of an ever-lengthening corridor. Finally, that sensation ended. I located a ladder and climbed out of the channel's end. Around me was a grassy field covered in snow, the sky firmly situated above me. It was real. I couldn't fathom the image. In front of me I saw Yushibana entirely still. A chilly breeze forced me to shrug my coat higher and cover my neck. Having trapped for hours in a building, I could see the vague outline of the horizon, but that wasn't all. Seeing Yushibana below me brought a relief I hadn't known was possible. Seeing that I'd been released, all my questions fell away. I didn't know why I was atop that hill, or what had really happened to me. All I knew in that moment was a soaring sense of liberty. I was actually free. I looked inside my purse again and saw keys. These belong to my apartment. They're not Atsuki's. The tickets aren't here either. I pushed off the snow on the stone that formed the tunnel and sat on it. Every part of my body still hurt, especially my back. I was breathing calmly, observing the silent town. From there, I could see the entirety of Yushibana. Close to me was the school I'd gone to, and a familiar park next to it. There was no way to really be sure, but I assumed that the tunnel I'd gone through was part of some kind of drainage system. It sloped down the hill to the centre of town, and I couldn't think of any other function for it than collecting water that would otherwise flood. It didn't really matter. I was out. The drainage channel, whatever it was, hadn't swept me away or drowned me. That long tunnel was a path to salvation. I didn't even know the true state of the world I was looking down on, but all by myself, I was finally able to experience peace. Forcing myself to move, I stood up and began to descend a thin path that started from the tunnel. I sensed my boots pressing on the snow until I was down the hill. Upon turning around, I saw the trail of footprints that I'd left. As bizarre as it was, I looked at them as proof that I was really there. My phone showed 9:48, and I was behind my school, where I'd rarely ever been at such a time. Much further in the distance, I could see the top of the only structure that rivaled Ashiya Tower's height, the hospital. Is that where I am right now? Or am I being brought there? I couldn't comprehend yet how the travel had worked, but I walked around the school and found myself in the park. We'd been that very day. I started to hear faint voices around me and saw dark silhouettes next to one of the benches. Of course, I wasn't alone in the town. Unaware of where I was headed, I followed the steps we'd taken at a time that felt very far in the past. Tall, round lights illuminated the rustic part of Yushibana. That day, we just happened to end up at the modest shop, but the present me deliberately walked into it. What will happen if they see me? There's got to be someone there. It's bound to change the past, right? I remembered all the narrow streets. No light could be seen through almost any window, and almost all of the footprints still on the ground entered at various doors. I looked from the final turn and stared at where the shop had been. In front of the door were two people talking to each other. One of them wore a suit, and the other wore casual clothes for the cold. I don't recognise either of them. Should I step forward? What would they ask me? And how would I answer anything? I chose to stay still. If the past could be changed, that wasn't the way to do it. Next to them was the window that had once grabbed our attention. I couldn't hear anything they were saying, but they hadn't sensed me either. Not long after, the man in the suit walked away. The other person saw him off and stayed where he'd been. They gave me the chance to look at his face. I was the owner of the shop. The other man was walking toward me, so I backed off toward another path to avoid being seen. I suddenly bumped into a car camouflaged by the dark. In the sky, the moon was hardly visible. Not helping things, fortunately. The snow on the ground told me where I was at every step. I seemed to be the only person there, so I kept going until I arrived at a road full of wheel marks. The streets were wider, and a couple walked by me. After so long, there was life around me, and the strain on my shoulders slowly faded away. Should I just go home? Atsuki was also brought to the hospital, and I was there for a week. I have the keys, so I really can't just go home. I really can just go. For what purpose was I in the past? Standing next to a lonesome streetlight. I knew I had to do something. I could change history. But sleep was the only thing on my mind. My body still felt battered and weakened. Getting to my bed was my priority. Everything else had become a background concern. There was nothing I could do right then. Why am I so tired? I feel different from when I was in the tower. Is it because this is how I was at this time on November 30th? My apartment was close by and I needed to rest. At that time of night, nobody should have been there. The cold was starting to get to me, so I tightened my coat around my shoulders as I walked. Taking my time, I continually looked at my surroundings as I walked. All of them were covered in the same white layer of snow. What will I do? I can only hope that I'll understand everything better tomorrow. But I should have enough time to think about it. If I'm right, my parents aren't even in Japan. I'm about to spend a week in the hospital again. And then I'll go live with Atsuki. It can just be my apartment until the 15th comes again. But then what? Do I try to make us not go to the tower? How would I attempt to prevent the attack from happening? Even if Atsuki and I don't go, there are people who will die. And in both cases, I'm giving up on going to the past again to save Mia. If the past can't be changed, I can't just leave her to die. But this is still really scary. At the time I change the past, I'll be stuck in a world with another self of mine, and I won't be the original. The me that Atsuki saw in the event room, will it really be me? Will I decide that I don't want to change the past? Just so that I keep living in a world where I'm the only version of myself? I wouldn't do that, would I? Arriving home, I saw a few people talking to each other. They had no idea I was from the future. Of course, nobody knew about the Sekimeiya's powers yet. How is that actually possible? Sekimeiya has already been announced as a discovery, so why would they let the public touch it with what it can do? Did Ashiya not know about that? I have no idea where it even came from. In the past, all those questions still had no answers. I turned toward a narrower street full of apartment blocks and looked far ahead, but we did find out where it was from. Maybe we can go back and find it before anyone else does. I stopped in the middle of it and went up a white metallic staircase. On the way, I took my keys out and walked to a door below a C plate. I stood in front of it and tried to sharpen my hearing. I can't hear anything. A little nervous, I inserted the key into the keyhole and kept it there for a while. Finally, I decided to turn it, making little noise. Should I try to be sullen? If I'm somehow in here, do I want to not be heard? What would I even do if I see myself? I can't go anywhere else. I opened the door slowly. The faint light of the night illuminated the way in, and I took a hesitant step forward. Naturally, I knew where the light switch was, so I reached out to it while I glanced around. When the ceiling lit up, I saw the same entrance I'd seen countless times before. Next to the door, I saw my reflection in the mirror. It looked a lot better than I'd imagined, probably because the body I was in hadn't made it to December yet. I closed the door and stood in the middle of the room, not much warmer. I still felt uneasy, so instead of taking off my shoes, I opened the door to the living room. There was a large window with its blinds closed, and in the center of the room, a wooden table on top of a green carpet. Everything looked like it had when I'd left on the 30th. I really was at home. There was an old TV on top of a low stand that I rarely used due to the poor signal. The coloured cushions were scattered all over the floor. Next to me was the door to the kitchen. In the sink were the few dishes that I hadn't washed, and in a corner was the laundry I hadn't finished. That day I'd really been looking forward to meeting Atsuki and Mia, and although we hadn't ended up doing much, I'd been excited to go. I walked back and opened the other door in the entrance. After lighting up the short hallway, I stepped to the first door. My bedroom was behind it. Further back were the last 3 doors. One led to my parents' bedroom, the other to the bathroom, and the last was a guest room with a small bed. I've been storing things in the guest room since it had been unused for so long, cramming a bookcase full. Recently, my drive to read had dropped off, but I still kept my favourites, front and centre. Nothing was out of place. Everything I'd put in there hadn't moved even slightly. There really was nobody here. It was the same modest apartment I'd always lived in, but it seemed like I'd last been there a very long time in the past. I left a trail of slick, snowy footprints, so I went to the entrance and left my boots beside the door. I entered my bedroom and draped my wet coat on a chair. My headache had been weakening, but many of my muscles were still sore. I didn't feel hungry, and my faint thirst was dwarfed by how tired I was. I left my purse next to the bed and fell on it with the clothes I'd been wearing. I closed my eyes on top of the large pillow and gradually wormed my way under the blankets. I was exhausted, but I didn't fall asleep immediately. There were too many things I had to think about. I just spent more than 12 hours sealed inside Ashiya Tower, so the sensation of my bed was far beyond welcome. However, it seemed I had suddenly arrived on the day where everything had happened. In the distance of the town must have been Atsuki, crying about the possibility of having lost his 2 closest friends. Somewhere else, other people must have been thinking about the attack they'd orchestrated on December 15th. I soon felt I should have turned on the heater, but I couldn't get out of bed. My mind went through most of the events I'd been caught up in, and I still didn't reach a single conclusion. I'd wanted to change the past, but comfortable as I was beneath 2 blankets, that was comparable to moving a mountain by hand. These short breaks are good for coffee time. Huh? The sound reached my covered ears and woke me up. I was frightened at first, but I quickly realised it had come from outside. And it didn't stop. Fireworks? Hearing fireworks in Yushibana was rare, but it was the start of the holiday season. I'd removed my head from under the blankets and paid attention to the sound. While it wasn't close to where I was, brief sparks of light could be seen through the window. I knew the air was still chilly, but I braced myself and pushed the blankets aside. I sat up and looked at my phone. It was 1:06. When I looked behind me, I saw the large screen of glass turning orange momentarily, reflecting the distant light. There really are fireworks. I never hear them here because the police always shut them down, but I bet someone sneaked some into town and wanted to celebrate the holidays. I see. I couldn't help but feel as if they were welcoming me, although I knew the truth was far from that. I was in a coma, so I never truly heard or seen those fireworks. There was nothing I wanted more than to view them with Atsuki and Mia, but that couldn't happen. Would it be possible to change the past so that it could? The past is really changing though. It had already been changed. That I was seeing those fireworks was proof. I was allowed to live through what I'd missed out on, the 2 weeks where I hadn't lived. I simply stared at the distant lights, my eyelids were drooping, but I didn't want to stop watching. The fireworks didn't last much longer. After a few minutes the struggle ones went off and they all calmly ceased. I dropped back onto the bed, still with no energy to turn on the heater or put on warmer clothes. That time I fell asleep almost instantly. I opened my eyes. I really wasn't in the attic. I was in my own bedroom, facing the pillow I'd evidently rolled off of. The whole room was lit, so sunlight must have been going through the glass of the window. With my face still under the blankets, I closed my eyes again, not yet wanting to face the cold. The first day of December. Mia's not here anymore. I'm in the hospital and Atsuki's probably at his house. Or I guess I'm actually in my bed. I vividly remember parts of a dream I just had. We'd all still been in the tower, and while the details escaped my grasp, it had entailed a messy conflict with the Sekimeiya. Out of nowhere, I realised that I'd been lying in bed for a while without doing anything. It had happened so quickly. It just felt like 10 minutes ago. I'd been waiting with everyone in the lobby. I'd been distressed in the tower, but why was I acting like nothing had happened? Was it just because I travelled to the past? Because there were 2 blank weeks ahead of me? And there was no reason to go over things I'd worried about once already? That logic didn't make a lot of sense. I'd gone to the past to change it, and I hadn't known how far I'd go. Since I was in the hospital at the time, as long as I went to Atsuki's house, I'd be changing the past. If he saw 2 versions of myself, he would have to believe anything I said. But I didn't rush out of bed, and I probably knew the real reason why. It was sheer burnout. In a way, it was similar to how I'd felt before meeting up with Atsuki and Miya, the period when I had absolutely no idea what to do with myself. I'd gone nowhere and done nothing for an amount of time that I couldn't measure. I'd lost track of days existing solely in my apartment. It had been a major depressive episode at the very least, but getting back together with not only one friend but two was the remedy for that. That's what I'd thought anyway. Miya had died and I'd entered a coma. If I'd been living in a haze before, it evolved into a thick fog at that point. I was a shell of a person for a while, thinking almost exclusively about dangerously dark things. I was grateful that Atsuki hadn't given up on me entirely for everything I'd put him through. But it was a distinctly different situation. Rather than falling deeper into dysfunction, I had obtained a goal, after going so far to the past, an abstract one, but a goal nonetheless. I kept lying there until my remaining tiredness dissipated. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I'd gathered the strength to sit up and look at the window, going off the strong light. I had slept for quite a few hours. My purse was next to the bed, so I grabbed my phone. 12:43. It's really late. As the buildings in Yushibana went very tall, I was able to see a good deal of the snow-covered town from my room. It wasn't snowing, and the sky was pretty clear. From behind the window, I felt as if I was aware of the fate of the entire town, even though what I knew was only related to a modest fraction of all those buildings. The icy air quickly got to me, so I went to the hallway, carefully walking on the wooden floor so that I wouldn't stagger. I reached the heater, which I normally only turn on during the nights, since my parents were the ones who paid for the expenses, and I didn't want to risk upsetting them. This'll be fine, right? Nobody's supposed to be living here, but I doubt it'll be noticed that gas and water were used. I hesitated a little, but I needed to get rid of the oppressive cold. Seconds after I turned the heater on, it let out a buzzing sound from the pipes running behind the wall. I guess even if someone does notice, it'll be at the end of the month, or maybe after that. It should be okay. I had a water bottle on the table. I never liked drinking tap water, so I always spent a bit of my monthly money on bottled water. Filters just weren't enough. I didn't bother pouring it in the glass. The hours I'd spent in Ashiya Tower no longer applied to my body, but I was extremely thirsty. To avoid grocery shopping too often, I usually had a cabinet packed with supplies. I'd refill it at the beginning of every month, which was why it was almost empty. I looked inside and grabbed a bag of mixed nuts. As expected, they weren't very good, as they'd sat in the cabinet all month, but I ate all of them almost instantly due to how hungry I was. I walked to the living room, almost like it was routine. The blinds were keeping the space dim, but I rarely bothered raising them. After going to the bathroom, I stood in front of my wardrobe, wondering which clothes to change into. I'd lived alone for many months already, so I started the day as if it were a normal one. Is it worth trying to make it seem like nobody's been here? I don't know how, but if the past could be changed, I'm planning on doing it. There shouldn't be a huge need to hide my stay. Or is that right? Could it be that while I was in the hospital and at Atsuki's house, another version of me was already living here? There's no way, is there? That would mean that everything will happen as I remember it. If the past will only change if I consciously made it, it shouldn't matter whether in reality I know I was already living here. After all, I didn't come home for the purpose of changing the past. If it's like this, and I intend to stay up until I decide to change history, everything could play out exactly as it once did. It should be confirmation that I'll be able to safely stay here until the 15th. There's nothing that makes it an impossibility, but so it could be that I always lived here and that I'm not changing the past yet. My parents never called me to say that someone was living at my place, and I never learned about it otherwise before the 15th, so I can secretly stay here, right? No contradictions. I didn't know if it would work like that, but worrying about it felt pointless. I chose some casual clothes to put on and stepped back into the living room. And now what? Even though I'd spent a long while living alone in the apartment, I'd always had plenty of things to think about, all of which I'd ended up pushing aside. I wouldn't by chance remember a lottery winning combination, would I? The only reason I hadn't thought that seriously was because I knew I didn't. So I'd mentioned using the Sekimeiya to win the lottery, but it wasn't actually that ridiculous of an idea. I didn't think it was greedy either. In fact, what felt selfish was not taking the chance when it was provided. If I could change the past, I'd go back in time again because that would allow Miya to be saved. That meant that before that point, I simply had to remember a winning number. That would create the possibility of a perfect future. Was I simply daydreaming in a hellish world? As long as the past could be changed, it didn't seem so. That future certainly felt attainable. Where is the Sekimeiya right now? Ashiya should have it somewhere, but they must be protecting it from Shin, so there's no way that I could touch it. Wait, no, that might not be the case. Katai and Surupo explained it to us. The Sekimeiya is merely bait for Shin. to get trapped in the tower, so it's definitely there right now. They also said the mechanism to trigger the alarm is based on the cabinet being forced open. Also, Shin never attacked before the 15th. Doesn't that mean that I can change the past by going there during the night and forcing the cabinet open? It's probably not in the event room yet, but it must be somewhere unavailable to the public. If I break it open, the alarm will lock me inside, and someone else will be locked in the security room. According to Katai, he hadn't taken the night shifts recently, so it'll probably be someone else. Will they buy that I'm a Shin member? It sounded pretty dangerous, but that could have been a way to travel to the past again. But if it didn't work, I'd be caught by the police ruining everything. Why were there times when touching the Sekimeiya didn't do anything? What if before the 15th it won't work, which is why nobody noticed its powers? Even if the main entrance of the building is locked, if the storeroom did lead out to the outside, I can maybe enter through it. There's no way I could take the entire cabinet out without triggering the alarm. Someone would be looking at the cameras, and I didn't know where the cabinet is. But to begin with, why did I go so far into the past? I still don't get that. The Sekimeiya was in the water tank, but it couldn't have been there for very long. According to Atsuki, it had hidden at one of the lockers a while before. Is it possible it gathered a lot of energy for another reason? Even thinking about it in my living room, there were many things I didn't know about the Sekimeiya. If I could be sure that such a plan could work, and I knew how to go days to the past, saving Mia should have been fairly simple. There's no way that I'll let everything happen exactly as it already did, so that I have the guarantee that the Sekimeiya will work, right? The unknown version of me that had been seen in the tower still haunted me, but that couldn't be it. No, if I were to do that, I would also prevent Atsuki and myself from going. That's completely out of the question. I wasn't even sure about my situation. I hadn't appeared in the dark tunnel like every other time. Instead of teleporting instantly, I had awakened, so I still felt like there might have been something I didn't remember. We thought about this once, didn't we? That perhaps travelling very far through time would make your memories foggy. Could that be why I feel this way? Is there something that I still can't remember? I wasn't sure. If there were some memories missing, I had no idea how to get them back. I stood up from the carpet and went to my room. My purse was still next to the bed. I picked it up and put on my coat, then I walked to the doorway where I left the keys I'd appeared with. I wanted to go outside. If it really was the first day of December, and what I thought of applied, there should be no issue with that. Nobody would be aware that I couldn't be walking in the streets. I put on my boots and opened the door. As expected, the air enclosed by all the mountains was overwhelmingly cold, but I really wanted to go out. On the snow were my footprints from the previous day, and some others ending at the nearby apartments. It was very rare for me to want to leave the house without knowing why. I usually only went outside with some purpose in mind. It was true that a lot of responsibility was weighing on me, but I didn't feel pressured. The freedom to make choices allowed me to remain relaxed to some degree. I looked at my purse. My wallet was inside it, containing the same amount of money I'd counted before leaving to meet Atsuki and Mia. Not that much. I closed my door and walked down the stairs. I lived close to the outskirts, and there usually weren't many people around. It wasn't too different that day, as only a handful of people were slowly walking on the sidewalk wearing overcoats and exhaling misty breaths. Maybe I really should have thought about where to go before leaving. I walked toward the centre of Yushibana, every street looking identical due to the coating of snow. There were a few parked cars and a bunch of footprints on the ground, but the environment felt pretty desolate. Everyone was inside. Everything in the immediate vicinity was residential, so I kept thinking about where to go. I guess I don't have anywhere to go. Don't have to go anywhere, I could just come back when I get tired. This is only for today though. I seriously need to decide on what to do. There were enough citizens in Yushibana that it wasn't very common to know people on the street. That was what allowed me to be unafraid of being recognised and questioned about being in the hospital. Do I go to the tower? What would I even do? And what else is there in town? The library? How long has it been since I went there? Too long, honestly. I could try eating something. It'd also been a while since I'd eaten anything outside. I always had to use my money well and cook at home. I guess I can do whatever I want with the money that I have. It's been duplicated. I had my purse next to me when I woke up at the hospital, so that original money is there, and I'm thinking about winning the lottery. Might just win the lottery today, who knows. I arrived at the busiest section of Yushibana, where I immediately saw a lot more people. Looking around, I saw that not many stores were open. This might not be a good idea. I've been to all these places at some point. Is it possible that being recognised could be problematic? Would I be changing the past if I accidentally see someone who knows that I should be in the hospital? There's no way what happened wasn't on the news. Even people who don't know me could recognise me. Nothing should happen, and if someone sees it as a big issue, then the past has been changed. But that seems very unlikely, and there's no way anything would happen to me. Even if I'm found out, it won't make getting to the Sekimeiya any harder. What would I do though? I wouldn't want to let Atsuki know. I've already travelled to the past alone, going against what Atsuki said in the tower said. Was I being selfish again? Potentially hindering any attempt to save me? I hadn't personally seen the past change yet. Only Atsuki had said that it was possible, and even he hadn't known the full specifics behind it. The worst scenario simply seemed to me having to use the Sekimeiya on the 15th, taking advantage of the attack. I turned toward a narrower street. As expected, Ina Cafe was open, and it was very rare for it to be closed. The barista there definitely knows me, and I need to understand better where I am. How will someone who knows me react if they see me on this day? I walked to the entrance, finally making up my mind. Through the glass I saw that the interior was empty, and Dafe was wiping down one of the tables. It had been a long time since I'd been there, but there had been a time in my life when I'd frequented the place, enjoying the calm atmosphere. On the ground was a square carpet to clean the snow off my shoes. I used it before opening the door and timidly walking in, immediately feeling the warm temperature. Dafe didn't turn around yet, so I looked at what was on the menu. Like in the past, there were light drinks and meals as well as alcoholic beverages closer to the night. Hello? Hello? He suddenly turned around. Huh. Shiroya? Yeah, it's been a while. Oh my god, you're alright. So you know what happened? I am, yeah. Of course, you're on the news. I managed a bitter smile in response to his relieved expression. I'm so glad you were released so quickly. How are you? I see. I really am supposed to be in a coma. I'm okay. I was released yesterday. Fortunately, nothing major happened to me. It's really good to hear. If you came to relax and try to forget about it, we don't have to talk about it. It's fine. You don't have to worry. Are you sure? I can't imagine what it must be like to lose someone close to you at your age. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Do you have any idea what happened? A lot of details weren't published. Unfortunately, no. It all happened suddenly. We were just caught up in it. He looked down, very clearly pitying me. Do you want coffee? I'm sorry, I don't have much else right now. No, I don't think I need any right now. Are you sure? I can make you the Kalitsu special. What is that? It's nothing. That's the special. He cracked a half-hearted smile, obviously trying to cheer me up. I tried to return the look, but I wasn't sure if my own smile was visible or not. I looked behind the glass cover where a few pastries remained. I'm a bit hungry, I could go for this. I pointed at one covered with dried chocolate. Of course, give me a second. He moved behind the bar, removed it with metallic tongs and put it on a small plate, which he placed in front of me. Here, don't worry about asking for anything else. Thank you. I bit into it, and I was hungrier than I thought. So, what will happen when he realizes that I'm still in the hospital? I haven't heard anything about Dafe in a while, so if everything were to happen as I remember, he shouldn't do anything. I really don't like having to lie to him though. I keep eating while he washed a few dishes left. You done? Do you want another one? I'm okay, but thank you. Alright, I'm seriously happy to see you though. I couldn't believe it when I saw your face on the news. Me too. Sorry for not having come in a while. Don't worry about that. Are your parents here? Dafe must have been in his late 30s, but he's been a good friend of my parents, who actually brought me there for the first time. I hadn't spoken to him in that many times, but I figured he was familiar enough with me, as he'd known me since I'd been a kid. They aren't. No? Will they come soon? They will, right? I don't know. As of now, they'll stay overseas. He looked puzzled and disappointed. In fact, I did know that they wouldn't come. Even after waking from my coma, they would only talk to me through phone calls. That's right. What will even happen now? 2 identical copies of my phone exist. How will calls work? Suppose it doesn't matter. If, when they call me, both phones receive the call, I'll just have to not pick up. If only mine rings, the past will be changing. Do come here anytime you want. You're more than welcome. I will. I just want to leave my home today. I completely understand. It's good for you to do. Yeah. I think I will have coffee. Absolutely. How do you want it? It's pretty late for coffee, actually. I'm not sure. Anything that's not too strong and without milk or sugar. As always, give me a second. He grabbed a short, transparent glass and filled it halfway. Do you want it alongside anything? He pointed at some bottles higher up. Those have alcohol, right? Yeah. Then no, I've never had any of that. I understand, but maybe you should. Last thing I want to do is make an alcoholic out of you, but it doesn't hurt in small quantities. It's okay, I'd prefer not to. He nodded and filled it all the way up. I was kind of surprised that he offered. I wasn't old enough to drink, and I could have gotten away with technically barely breaking the law, but I wasn't in the mood anyway. He left a glass next to an empty plate. As usual, it was overly hot. I stretched my hands behind my back and he looked around me. I was the only person there. A newspaper. A few seats away there was an open newspaper that someone must have started to read and left. I pinched it and pulled it toward me. It should say today's date. I looked at the top right corner. As expected, there was the date. It really is December 1st. Is this new? The newspaper, yeah. I brought it closer and looked at the pages for the current news. It was Yushi news, so events from Yushibana were highlighted. Mia and I must appear somewhere in here. I flipped the pages toward the start, as I felt it should have been important enough to put at the beginning. When I got to the initial 2, I stopped myself. Here it is. The category was November, and there were many brief articles. The last one was titled Gas Explosion Late at Night. I read the tiny letters next to the black and white picture of the shop. Mia Moiromo, a 20-year-old girl, is the only casualty of a local gas explosion that occurred in the evening of November 30th. Shiroya Mirana, another young girl, 19 years of age, was gravely injured and immediately sent to the hospital. Her condition is critical, although she wasn't directly hit by the explosion. The incident occurred when an unknown individual released smoke that caused 4 people inside to lose consciousness. The other 2 were too far from the range to receive any serious injuries. While everyone was unconscious, a heater depleted its surrounding oxygen after the flame went out. And when a visitor turned on the lights, an immediate explosion of short radius but intense force occurred. It killed the first victim instantly and broke the floor of the shop. The second girl, Mirana, was protected by the furniture next to her but fell through the broken floor. It happened just like I remembered. It doesn't even say why the incident happened. Right, on the 15th, when smoke knocked us out for the second time, I thought that both incidents must have been caused by the same people. That would be Shin. Wait, it actually is this, I'm not wrong. It was caused by Shin. That's why no further details got published. Well yeah, obviously, because the gem shop probably had the Sekimeiya at that point. That's what Katai told us. That one time Shin had already tried to steal the Sekimeiya, but they'd failed. They almost caught the person behind it, but since they ended up escaping, it wasn't published that they'd been from Shin. Oh, of course, in the attic. I knew I recognised that smell. I'd smelled it in that shop. That's what happened there. Shin tried to steal the Sekimeiya before it was brought to Ashiya Tower. The Sekimeiya was in the shop, and for some reason Shin didn't succeed. Katai said that a member was almost caught too. That made sense as the outline of what had occurred, but it didn't mean anything to me aside from the fact that Mia's life had been taken during an attempt to steal a gemstone. At that point, did Shin know what the Sekimeiya would do? Or did they attempt to steal just another simple gem that Ashiya had? The advertising had just started. I huffed, frustrated and angry. I began to drink the coffee. As I scanned the pages, more concise articles came into view. I read the title of one higher up on the page. Huh? Unknown man escapes from prison cell. Intrigued by the premise, I read the body of the article. In the afternoon of November 24th, the camera of a prison cell recorded a prisoner escaping from it. What? Is it talking about a prison here? I don't think there is one in Yushibana, so maybe it's just talking about holding cells in the prison department? Police department? The identity of that person remains unknown. They were dressed as a prisoner, but no footage shows who they were or how they ended up in that cell. The corridor that they were in was unprotected, and nobody should have been inside the cell. By the time the footage recorded them was noticed, they'd already disappeared. As the prison cell should have been vacant, it wasn't locked. There was no security in that area, so it is possible the individual left the entire building. Their identity and the way they got in the cell were under investigation, but no method to reach it, such as a hidden passage between cells, was found to exist. What the hell? I never heard about this. I guess I don't really watch or read the news. Next to the paragraph was a picture. It showed a still black and white image of the footage, which displayed the bars protecting the cell. The door was open, and the man could be seen leaving it. However, due to the high angle, his face couldn't be seen, and a single detail to go off was his short, dark-looking hair. This person supposedly appeared in the cell, huh? I guess there are many unsolved mysteries that I could solve by factoring in the Sekimeiya. Who's to say that it hasn't been used in crimes before it made its way to Ashiya? I downed the rest of my coffee. It wasn't supposed to be strong, and I didn't feel any reaction from it. At one point, coffee had stopped, always having a positive effect on me, and sometimes it would do more harm than good, so I stopped drinking it frequently. You done? Do you want anything else? I'm fine. I stood up from the stool and looked at my purse. You're not going to try and pay me, are you? Don't even think that. Oh, are you sure? Are you sure? Of course. You can come back anytime if you feel like it. I'm serious when I say that. I was really glad to see you. And I'm relieved to see that you're alright. Okay, I really appreciate it. I don't want to stick my nose in your business, but I think you should talk to your parents. I can do it if you prefer, but I can't believe they haven't come. Don't worry. I have been talking with them. I think I prefer to be alone though. Is that so? I see. I smiled and walked to the entrance. Seeing the desolate street from such a warm place made for a very pleasant contrast. Bye. I'll see you. There are a lot of things I want to talk to you about, so come back when you want. As you can see, we're not even closed on Sundays, so it can be any day. I wish you the best to get through this. I nodded and walked out. Did I look like a person bearing a lot of pain? To be talking casually and smiling only one day after Mia's death, I assumed that must have been the only explanation to Dafe. I unconsciously picked a side and walked away. Everything around me, existence itself, felt calm. I still wondered how that was possible. Only days previously I'd questioned whether I would speak again. Just what had happened to me? It wasn't that I didn't feel any pain, as my own anymore, or that I simply expected Mia's death to be overwritten. After all, even if I did erase it, my memories wouldn't go away. Had all the terrible events afterwards outweighed it? Made it insignificant? How was that even possible? No matter the reason why I felt so tranquil, I liked it. Being able to find any kind of comfort was a welcome change, even if the future was uncertain, and even if it still revolved around the second one. Alright, we need to wrap this one up here because we're out of time for today, but this is interesting. I'm enjoying this part where we're just sort of hanging out in Yushibana, and I don't know what she's planning to do. I don't think she knows what she's planning to do, but obviously it's going to end up bringing Mia back because she comes back. In chapter 2 she was back, so at least someone else did that. But I feel like it would be a mistake. If I was her, I wouldn't want to let myself and Atsuki go back into that tower to relive that shit, you know? I want to avoid that. Even if it meant you couldn't go back in time. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.